Hi, I'm Drew, and I'm going to teach you how to set up an MCP with Claude Desktop. In another video, I talked about the MCPB file, and you can do it that way. But for Claude Desktop and other applications where there's MCP setup that needs to be done, I kind of want to walk you through how you can set it up with Claude Desktop through an MCP thing. Like specifically, like when I do it at work, I can't actually use the MCPB file because of IT controls, so I have to set it up with a little bit more involved setup. Not that much more involved, but figured to walk you through. So the first thing we're going to do is we got to start NoteCove itself because this is the thing we actually want to do. We're going to create a new profile. We're going to call it the demo profile because this is a demo. We have a couple of different profile modes here. There's local for just storing it all locally. If it's never going to leave the computer you're installing it on, that's perfect. That'll work just fine. Cloud, if you want to share this between machines or ultimately with like iOS devices will be coming shortly with iCloud at least. Not all the file systems look the same, but like if you like for example, like I share it over Google Drive between my work and my personal. You could share it over iCloud, you could share it over Dropbox. It doesn't really matter. It is just some shared file system in the cloud that you have access to. There's paranoid mode if you're for various reasons, if like you're worried about the traffic that comes out of this thing, for things like link unfurls, whether we're checking for updates, basically just minimal network access. I think it's actually no network access, um, because some people need that. And then custom. Custom is usually the case where you've already got a storage directory set up from some other setup, and so that allows you to kind of configure it however you want. For our case, we just need local. It'll be fine. Tells us where it's going to store it, and asks for an identity. You can leave this blank. You can always change it later. It's not a big deal. But like if you're working like again between say like work and personal, you might want to say like, hey, this is my work one or this is my personal one, because there's at mentions and things like that for assignee fields and a few other places where you can use them. Use it if you like it. You don't have to if you don't. Again, if you change your mind and realize like you don't have to worry about it if you get it wrong on install. So we'll view and create. That looks fine. Not much to choose, and let's launch. Okay, and we get a little did you know? Okay, so just kind of give you an overview of the UI. Here's obviously the note editor. It's got a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Um, we don't need to do the restart because this is a nightly build anyway. But the middle pane is like of the contents of a folder. You've got the all notes, but you can make folder like a full-blown folder tree here. And then you can decide if you just want to see notes, just tasks, and there's some filter criteria here. But this is where a lot of the stuff shows up. Um, let's see, there's the folder view, of course. If you have multiple storage directories, they'll look like you'll see this and another one, this and another one, like it's kind of the same thing. Projects, which you'll see in a bit. Smart folders, they're sort of like saved searches. I mean, kind of configure a whole bunch of things. You can mix and match between the storage directories if you have more than one. And there's a bunch of different criteria that you can pick, but they're super useful for that sort of stuff. And then there's tags. It's like hashtags. So you can drop these in your document. You can specify like, yes, I want things that have this tag and not this tag. So you can do both positive and negative matching. Really handy for just finding stuff and being able to make things a little bit easier to find because when you have, like in my case, I've got close to like 1,000 things in it. Trying to track them all down can sometimes be a little bit complicated. Anyway, but we came here to actually like set up the MCP stuff. So the MCP all works through the CLI. So we'll install the CLI. It lies. This actually is in my path. I'm still working on this. Mind the gap. It'll be fine. We'll install it. Then it says it's already installed. Perfect. So yeah, so if you're using something like Claude Code, you don't actually have to do any MCP business because like it could just invoke the CLI, so it'll be fine. But to use the CLI, you have to actually authenticate it with the app. The reason being is just because like if this gets invoked someplace, you want to make sure that you know that it's doing it. It's not one of these things you just want to just happen secretly in the background. But in order to connect with it, we have to know what the profile ID is. So we can do NoteCove profile, and we'll see it's that one. Another way to get the profile, just in the case that like it turns out you need it, it's in the about dialog here. There's also an instance ID. You pretty much never need to know that, but it's there just on the off chance that becomes useful. So NoteCove init. So the way that you authenticate with it is through the NoteCove init command. You give it a profile ID, which is this, and then you specify what kind of access you want to give it. You can restrict it to the folder, you can restrict it to a specific storage directory, you can restrict to a project. You can kind of mix and match a bunch of different stuff. For our case, we're just going to give it all tasks and all notes because we've got nothing here for it to risk, and that sort of thing. And we're also going to pass the global flag here just for the purposes of the demo. Normally when NoteCove init runs, there's a .notecove file that it drops in the current directory. And so like when you invoke it, it basically looks in the current directory and looks at the parent directory and so forth until it encounters one of these to figure out how it should access things and what key it should use, because there's a shared secret between NoteCove and this. Anyway, so when we say global, it's basically like it's the catch-all for if it's not in a directory that has one of these, because that will actually take precedence over this. But for our case, we're just going to say it's the global config. And just to make sure that we are aware that this is actually what's trying to happen, it pops up a little dialog where we can specify approve or deny. In our case, obviously, we want this to work, so we're going to approve. And like I said before, the MCP works through the CLI itself. And there's a couple different ways you can do MCP. You can either do it through TCP/IP, or you can do it through standard in. By default, if you don't pass anything, it's going to use standard in. TCP/IP with this is probably unlikely that you're going to need it, but it's one of those things when you need it sort of things. So the thing is that there's usually some snippet of JSON that we're going to have to stick someplace. So fortunately, if you do print config, it'll give it to you, and this is what it's going to look like. It looks weird because this is where that thing actually lives. But in the case of if you pass the host and port things, it would give you one that's more applicable and handles that. So, all right, so let's go over to Claude Desktop here. We'll go to config and developer. There we go. Manage we want to do local MCP servers. Okay, so it's given us this. We'll open it with text edit, the most boring text editor ever. And we'll basically just copy this. And all right, and we'll save. And for this to take effect, you have to kill and restart Claude. So we'll do that. All right, now, if everything worked according to plan, this we'll do a query here and take it for a spin. Can you see the welcome note in NoteCove? If you can, create a new project named demo and drop a ticket in it to revisit it with a new thing, and include a link to the welcome note so we can find it. Then open the ticket so that we can see it. And here, like the way that the MCP works and the CLI works, it kind of goes with progressive disclosure of what it needs to know. So like you don't have to specify like how do I type in a ticket link, or what is the JSON output of this or that, because there's agent instructions as part of the help. Because it like at the bottom of the help, it actually says like if you're an agent, do this. And so it kind of gives it the idea of like how to understand how to interoperate with it. So this way we don't have to have a skill that says like how to do NoteCove. And here we saw it was able to make the ticket. Okay, we'll get Claude out of the way for a moment. All right, and you can see the ticket. It looks, if you've seen Jira before, it's not dissimilar to that. And we can open up a Kanban board and see the kinds of things that we normally see. And so, here we can actually, like, it's got the link. We can drag this over here, and we'll notice that the state changes, and we can click over here. And this takes us to the welcome note. And we can scroll to the bottom, and we can make a ticket link to it to do demo. Oops, demo 1T. There we go. And you'll notice that this follows the same color as the ticket. So if we drag that over to do, it turns gray. And if we drag it over to done, it turns green. Personally, I find this really helpful for like when I'm working with Claude Code. Like I'll have a plan and I'll have a bunch of steps in it that are tickets. And so as it's executing the tickets, it'll look on a march across the Kanban board. But then when I look at the original plan document, you can see it like as it turns from gray to blue to green. Super helpful. Sometimes Claude Code decides to defer things or decide things were optional. And like at the end of the plan, it's really nice to be able to see like, okay, what did it actually do? Sometimes Claude forgets to update the plan, and in which case you can have it go back and fill in the tickets to see, like what was done, what wasn't. One of the things that when you're hopping between like ticket and things like this, it can be a little bit tricky to be like, how do I get back? There's not a back button yet, but we do have backlinks. So you can find out, obviously you have the links that go from this document, but now you can actually figure out what links are coming inbound. And so we can click that and come back. And likewise over here, the backlink should pop open. Try it again. There we go. And we can go back and forth between these things. Makes it really easy to kind of do it. And just in general, like one of the things I really like about this kind of system with the notes and everything is just like, as I'm working with Claude, it's really easy to just have it file a ticket for something that's kind of like in the middle of doing something else. So I say like, file a ticket because of this, let's go continue to work on the note. There's a bunch of other interaction patterns that I'm going to talk about in other videos. Because like with Notes, one of the things you can do is you can do like Google Doc style what do you call it? Drop comments in a doc, and Claude can reply to them into the replies. And likewise, Claude itself can actually reply to them. But there's a bunch of really cool things. Again, see the other videos, and enjoy. Happy note coding.